I served as an AD and an RD for my region, and then was elected to serve at the World Service Conference in 2016 and 2018 as the co-facilitator of the conference. So I'm going to talk to you about how the World Service Conference came to use consensus-based decision-making. So there were times when they did not use it. And when we read about the traditions, we use this phrase called "our hard-won experience gave birth" to the traditions. So it was our hard-won experience that gave birth to the processes that finally came to work really well in 2018. So I experienced a lot of difficulty, long hours, contentious fights for the microphone. I want to say what he just said, but I want to say it in my words. Long hours of fighting and unhappy outcomes from decisions. Now, there is in a straight voting, there's the winner and there's the loser. So, and the margins can be very slim. So almost half of the people can go away from a decision feeling very unhappy. And so in consensus-based decision-making, as Mike was saying, there's something more in alignment with group conscience because the goal is that everyone gets an opportunity to, let me say, every issue gets to be heard. So there are a couple of really important things about any consensus model. It must be understood by all the participants. There must be some buy-in for it. And there need to be some parameters set, because in a large group, particularly a group like the World Service Conference, there's never going to be 100% of the people that are going to say yes to something. It happens every once in a while, like for a piece of literature that everyone is really excited about, that sort of thing. But in general, there are difficulties at the World Service Conference because across the world, and there are representatives from every region in the world on the floor, as well as some zonal representatives and some alternate delegates. So in general, over 200 people. So regions have different guidance for their delegates. Some of them say, this is exactly how we want you to vote. We don't care what comes up. This is your vote. We workshopped everything in the conference agenda report, and this is our vote. You take our vote. Others say, well, this is what we think with what we know, but if something comes up and you know our conscience, and if it's changed in this way, we would support that too. Or we don't support it now, but if something happens or you put in an amendment or something, then we would support it. So they have some leeway. And then there are other regions that say, yeah, we don't know, you decide. And so there are different voices that are with sort of different ideas that are coming to the floor. So some people can move, some people can't. And so as we start down the path of making decisions using consensus-based decision-making, there's sort of a logic tree that occurs. So what I have done is in the chat, I've put a link to a piece of literature created by World Services after many workshops and service events and small group discussions and input from around the world. They created, it's called CBDM Basics. And you can, there's a link in the chat. It's very, very good. And they talk about the philosophy of it, and they talk about how it can be implemented. So at the World Service Conference, you know, this is a broad stroke because there is no way for every single person to be heard on every issue that comes before the body. There aren't enough days to do that. So there was a stepwise movement towards consensus-based decision-making. And that really came to full fruition in 2018. And it worked very well. So what the body finally defined and gave the facilitators the trust to carry out was a system that had some rules. And they defined consensus as 80% or more support. And they also said, since we're moving toward consensus decision-making, it will take at least 2/3 to pass any proposal. So with those thresholds, the body is presented a proposal, and they do and a straw poll is taken. So that straw poll measures the temperature of the body, you know, like, okay, there are 70% who say yes to this. And so we're not at consensus, but people have something to say. So discussion is opened. And this discussion is then taken to a point where the facilitators can take another straw poll and continue to test the body to see when they're ready to take a final vote. And so some things can be dispensed with very quickly. So those things that are over 80% consensus, we hear from 2 in the minority if they care to speak and take another straw poll, which is a final vote. So those things that don't need discussion can be dispensed with very quickly. And then the things that require a lot of discussion, that time is opened for it. Now, that didn't used to be the way it was with Robert's rules. It seems like everything took a long time, and we would work well into the night, and the schedule would get pushed, and we could never finish business in the time that we had scheduled. And so what we ended up with in 2018, and then of course in 2020 when they had the partial virtual conference, they had some stutter steps, but ended up being able to use these rules very effectively, even with a virtual conference. So I think it really requires an understanding and a buy-in to the process. It requires
Laura, you have 5 minutes remaining.
thank you. It requires a skill set by the participants, and that those skills being an understanding of the process, being willing to give honest input, being willing to understand group conscience and the will of the body as it arises. And then it also requires a good facilitator at every level. A good facilitator is really key to carrying out the process. The body needs to trust that facilitator. For one, that they are, as the terminology I've heard is assiduously neutral. That the facilitator has no stake in the outcome. The facilitator is the helper of the process only, without any regard to outcome. And I'll tell you, that kind of trust, if breached, may never be regained from a group. So it's very important to have a neutral facilitator. And particularly at the World Service Conference, it's important to have a tone, a tenor, and a tempo that is soothing, inspires confidence, and because we have many languages spoken at the World Service Conference, people are getting real-time interpretation. So it really helps to use consistent language again and again so that everyone knows where in the process we are and where we're going. And that really creates a lot of trust that people will be heard, that the outcomes will be uninfluenced, and that the process is going to get us through the day and get us through the agenda in a way that everyone feels good about what has occurred. And I have done CBDM at other levels. I'm currently the facilitator of the Western States Zonal Forum. So I've also done zonal facilitation, and it works really well in small groups, in home groups, in areas and regions. And the other speakers that you have coming forth are going to talk about their experience, and I know that they will, because I know Lewis usually has a PowerPoint, they're going to show you some of those flows of how a consensus-based decision-making process flows. And I hope that throughout this process, you'll find something that is useful for you to take to whatever service body it is that you're going to be in. And I really appreciate, thank you, Wilvina, thank you, Mike, for inviting me to be here. I appreciate you all, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest of the presenters. Thank you very much.